The other day, someone asked me what my journey has been like in business. And without thinking, I was just like, it was simple, but it was hard. And when I really look back on the last 6 years of my business, I couldn't really remember the hard stuff. To me, it just seems like I woke up one day and I'm here. It's like, the 10-year overnight success. But when I really look back on it and I was like, wow, it actually wasn't as straightforward as I think it was today. And I think about I start remembering some of the things that happened along the way, like the first big contract I lost, the first dispute I had with a client, the first employee I had to fire, and there's all these little problems that happen that I've kind of just filtered out of my brain. And now, 6 years later, I look back on the previous 6 years on the real grind of the business, and I'm like, yeah, it was easy in hindsight. And I saw this thing, I forgot who it was by, but it was kind of about how everything seems better in hindsight because there is no uncertainty. And it's like watching a sports game versus watching the highlights. Like, it doesn't paint the full picture, and your brain tends to just filter out a lot of the negative or, kind of just placeholder stuff. And so you can get to a point where 5, 6, 7, 10 years later, you look back on your experience and you're like, that was actually pretty easy. Like, it was great. Like, the last 6 years were great. Like, my business journey has been fantastic. But then you start to dissect what actually happened. You're like, there was a lot of stuff I had to go through. And even people like the billionaire Warren Buffett, they'll talk about how people say, the last 15 years of the stock market has been great. Like we've never seen returns like this in any other 15-year span in the stock market. But then, you break it down, you're like, but we had this crash in like '08, and then we had, 2012 or whatever there was, and 2020 and 2016 or whatever other crashes there were and other dips in the market. But you don't remember that in hindsight because there is no uncertainty in retrospect. And so you just look back over it as a whole, you look at the outcome, and you don't remember the decisions that were clouded by risk and doubt and like the incomplete information. So really emphasizing how uncertainty distorts our perception of past events and kind of makes successful investments, business decisions, all of that stuff look like no-brainers in retrospect, even though they weren't at the time. And so I think it's one of the biggest mental traps as a business owner is this highlight bias where we look back on our journey, especially if we've gotten to a place of success or fulfillment or accomplishment. And then we look back and we start to think that we didn't really do anything extraordinary or overcome really big hurdles and challenges to get to where we are. And then we hear narratives online and we hear other people talk about us, and we look at the people around us who are, we see them as our equals and akin to us, but they're not doing as good on a different path in life, or maybe even in the same industry. Look at other fellow cleaning business owners who you may think like, they're just like me, but they're struggling. And it creates that imposter syndrome that so many business owners are familiar with. And even people who aren't, like, even if you've just started out, it's a demon that you're going to have to tackle with at some point. It's something that you're going to have to reckon with. It's like that highlight bias where you look back on your journey and you just don't feel that sense of fulfillment and accomplishment because your brain filters out all the negative stuff. And I even do this on a smaller scale where I'll think about a client I lost, and there was this client I lost about a year ago, and it was a pretty good client to have. It was like $750 a week, good income. And I'm like, man, I missed that client. I'm so gutted we lost that. But then I also forget about how bad they were at paying. I forget about how not nice the staff were to our staff during operating hours. And all I thought about was like the money we lost. And so you forget about the struggles and the hurdles that you face along the way in anything. And you filter it out, and you get stuck in this negative cycle. So uncertainty is the real villain. The present feels heavier because you're still figuring it out, but the past feels light because the outcomes are already written. And as you'll know, a lot of business decisions and big life decisions, they'll feel overwhelming in real time. But once you move past them and you've dealt with them, they look like obvious wins, and they kind of rewire your brain to be like the new normal or the new baseline. So if I went to zero tomorrow, if I lost my whole business and I started again from scratch, I would get to where I am now again in a much, much quicker time span. It may not look the same. I may not get here in the same ways. I may not have the same clients, the same kind of staff, but I would get to where I am again because I've created a new baseline for myself. Because every time we go through these scenarios and these situations where we're faced with a hard challenge or a hard decision or something tough that we have to overcome, and we accomplish that and we get through it, two things happen. First, we forget the complexity of it because the uncertainty is lost once it's been dealt with. And when we look back in retrospect, there is no uncertainty. And so when we look back on things that were hard in real time, we don't remember those visceral negative feelings that we had about it. And it just looks like, everything worked out in the end and it was easy, or it was like a glorious hustle, instead of really depressing and had you bogged down and wanting to quit every day. Because it's really easy for me to romanticize the first couple of years of my business and be like, yeah, that was just part of the grind. That was the hustle. I knew where I was headed. And I've said that many times. I'm like, I knew that I was gonna be something. I knew that this business would be good. But honestly, looking back in the moment, there were so many days where I didn't know if I was going to make it out of that, if I was going to make it out of that rut, if I was going to get to where I wanted to be. I had imposter syndrome in the moment, and I have it still now because I look back and I just forget about the raw emotions I had back then, which was a big driver for me to, get to where I am now. And I think it also ties into like burnout. People talk about burnout, like, how do I avoid burnout? How do I eliminate feelings of burnout? I think because also going back, the first 3 years of my business, I was working like ridiculous hours. I was doing like 100 hours a week, every week, all year round with no breaks. And I did not feel any sort of burnout whatsoever. I personally think if you are so purpose-driven that it doesn't matter how many hours you work, as long as you have a clear vision of where you want to head and you have a tangible goal that you're working towards, you will not feel burnout. But now, 6 years into my journey, I'm at a place where I've kind of gotten to where I wanted to be initially. And the goal now isn't so much to, achieve financial freedom or autonomy or time freedom. The goals are much less significant to me now. And so if I try to work like I did in my first couple of years, I will feel that burnout. And so that's just another thing as well. People talk about burnout. I think that if you need motivation or if you're feeling burnout, then your why is not strong enough. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe you disagree with that. Maybe, there's going to be people out there who are just working nonstop and because they have to feed their family and they're feeling burned out and they want to stop. But I still say to that, your why isn't big enough. You don't have a clear vision of where you want to be and you don't know how to get there. And I think once you've got that in place, once you've got that in motion, it seems unreasonable for you to experience burnout because with a decent amount of certainty and assurance where you're going to end up as a result of the hard work and the inputs and the actions that you're taking right now. But yeah, it's easy for me to romanticize the hustle and forget about those times where I really felt like quitting and just didn't know what I was doing. And I really want to implore people to, it's also why I say document the journey. It's good to document every day of your business journey, just so one day you can look back and really take note of how far you've come and relive those experiences and those visceral emotions you had in the moment. And even just journal, just write down every day. It's a good exercise to get thoughts out of your head as well, because it helps your mental clarity in the moment, but it also helps you when you are further down the track looking back in retrospect, which leads into the other trap as well, which is the social media trap. So if you're comparing your present situation and your present mess, if you will, and you're comparing that to someone else's edited highlight reel online, whether in the form of an Instagram reel or a TikTok or a YouTube video, that's how that bias can affect you in other ways as a business owner. It creates unrealistic expectations, like for clarity and confidence, and it's going to get you in this negative cycle, which can oftentimes be hard to break out of. And I think it's also why a lot of business owners give up and fail in the early days, because they get stuck in that trap. And so I want to emphasize the importance of reframing the present. So instead of chasing the feeling you had back then, realize that it was the certainty of the outcome that gives the past its glow and gives you the reassurance. So just journal what you're going through now. Capture the rawness of it right now. Review your old emails and if you have made videos in the past, review your old videos or just look at old notes that you've taken and see how lost you felt before the wins, and remind yourself, like, I've felt this uncertainty before. So I got through it then, I'll get through it now. Because at every stage of the business journey, every level of growth brings a new kind of uncertainty. It's a new beast that you have to tackle. It's a new monster that you have to take down. And it doesn't mean that you're off track. It just means that you're evolving. So yeah, I just wanted to make a quick little episode about that because I found myself in that kind of trap a few times where I was looking back on my journey and then comparing myself to other people who were ahead of me and getting imposter syndrome and doubting myself and just getting really insecure about my own ability as a business owner. So, they say the comparison is the thief of joy, and it really is. But if you dig deeper, those are some of the reasons why. It's because you experience and you feel that uncertainty and you start comparing yourself to other people's successes, and then you look at your current situation and you're like, wow, I'm not there. I don't know how to get there. I don't know if I have the ability or I can find that within me to get to where they are. And it's like, of course you can't. There's chasms that you have to cross. There's things that you have to overcome, and that's just part of the business journey. And you will learn that as you go. So people starting out, don't compare yourself to someone like me who's 6 years in and millions and millions of dollars ahead. I had to learn all the same stuff that you did when you started out, and you're going to come to learn that as well. Every single person who's in business, who's in a cleaning business now that has achieved some level of success, they had to go through the same exact stuff that you're experiencing right now. The same setbacks, the same pitfalls, the same customers lost, the same revenue lost and gained and all these things. It just might look a little bit different. It's just packaged a little bit differently. And for me now, to go to where I'm at, to get to where I want to be, which is, $10 million a year plus, if I start comparing myself to other people who are doing what I want to do, I start to feel those same emotions and that same uncertainty and that same imposter syndrome completely the same as someone starting out comparing themselves to someone a little bit further along in the journey. And so just remember to remind yourself of the journey throughout. And also, when you feel that uncertainty later on, just remember you felt that uncertainty earlier as well, but you adapted, you evolved, and you grew to become the person that you needed to be to overcome those things. And so imposter syndrome is a big killer of business owners, and I think that's one of the main reasons why. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. And also, on another note, I got an email about this new government-launched program called the Small Business Growth Grants Program. And now, by the time you're listening to this, if it's in the future, this will probably be completely obsolete and irrelevant. And this is actually specific to Western Australia, but I'm going to get to the actual point of this in a minute. But I got an email about this, and it's called the Small Business Growth Grants Program, and they're offering up to $10,000 in matched funding to help eligible businesses access professional services, including local digital marketing services. So what does that mean? Pretty much means that if approved, the government will cover 50% of the costs up to $10,000 for campaigns like Google Ads, SEO strategies, branding and repositioning, website development, digital marketing consultations, and all that stuff. And to be eligible, your business just has to be based in WA for this particular grant scheme, be registered for GST, and have a turnover above 100K, which is, pretty reasonable for a $10,000 grant. And so I just want to really to highlight these grants, because I don't see people in this space going after grants much. Grants is such a powerful thing. Like in Australia, we have a lot of great government grants for small businesses, and they're not really utilized much. I think most people just don't know about them, and the people that do know about the grants just think like, oh, well, that probably wouldn't apply to my business. They don't even look into it. They're just like, oh, there's no way that I would be eligible for a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 grant. But these things just come across my email like every couple of weeks. I might get a grant where it's like you can purchase up to, you can get a grant for $5,000 worth of equipment or $10,000 worth of office equipment or office supplies. And so just look at grants in your state or in your township or in your local council. There's always grants going on that help small businesses, because despite what you may think, despite what I even think about the ATO and the government does like to help small business, because small business is the backbone of the economy. So they do grants a lot. And Just imagine what a $10,000 digital marketing grant could mean for your business. That could really catapult your growth and kickstart your journey to multiple hundreds of thousands a year in revenue added. So that's a cool thing. If you are listening to this in the present, and if you live in WA and you have a business over $100,000 a year, check out that grant and get like up to $10,000 of matched funding for digital marketing services. Pretty cool. As for how to actually find out about these grants, it's pretty easy. Just go to like government grant websites, just Google, or even just, hit up Google and be like small business government grants and click that, do a little bit of digging. You can even use ChatGPT, and grants can be a great way to grow your business. It's pretty much free money from the government. The application process may be a bit lengthy, but it's definitely worth it, and it's something worth exploring. So I'm going to apply to this one and potentially get this and just pump it into Google Ads or something, because you're pretty much playing with house money at that point. So why not? And that's the podcast for today. I don't really know if that's going to land with many people. It's just something that I kind of realized for myself, and it's something that I felt really, really personally. Like I felt when I was looking back on my journey, I had these feelings of doubt and imposter syndrome and uncertainty about the future. But I just have to remind myself about the journey to get here, because your mind plays games on you. Your brain, it can be your biggest aid and your biggest enemy. So my brain tends to forget a lot of the stress and the anxiety and the negative stuff from my journey, but it's good to remind yourself of that. And it's also good in those moments where you feel uncertainty now, further along in the journey, to remind yourself, like, I felt this same uncertainty at an earlier stage when I was tackling a different beast or a different hurdle or a different challenge. And it's the same exact feeling now, it just looks a little bit differently. It's dressed up differently. And so as long as you have that mindset, which is the most important thing in business, your mindset is the one thing nobody else can take away from you. If you have a strong mindset and a strong drive, then no one can stop you. So hope you found that insightful, inspirational, or something at least. I hope that landed with at least a few of you. And with that being said, we'll end off here for today. So a couple call to actions. Just start documenting your journey if you're not already. If you're already further along in your journey, I want you just to really look back and start to dissect what led you to where you are now. And remind yourself, because oftentimes we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. So remind yourself of all the challenges and the things you had to overcome, and look at your growth from day one to now, and just look at how much you've evolved and adapted. And that confidence that gives you, the confidence that you got from your past wins and your past journey, carry that forward into the present and into the future. And just remind yourself that you're going to experience the same emotions, you're going to experience the same challenges. It's just going to be dressed a little bit differently. So as long as you apply that same mentality and that same mindset to it, towards those challenges and those problems and those pitfalls, you cannot fail. You can only become failure if you tell yourself you are a failure and you give up. So that's it. And also check out grants in your state or your city. They're always doing small business grants. It's a great way to grow your business. It's free money from the government. Who wouldn't love that? Especially when we have to pay so much bloody tax to them. So thanks for listening. Hope you have an amazing day and rest of your week, and we'll talk again soon.